Hi there. Welcome back to the Out of the Cave podcast with Lisa Schlossberg. I'm your host, Lisa Schlossberg, a licensed social worker, certified health coach, personal trainer, and yoga instructor. If you, like I have, struggle with your relationship with food, eating, and body image, I am here with this podcast to guide you into healing the relationship you have with yourself through a trauma-informed, holistic, and mind-body-soul approach. Together, we can support you in building a lifestyle of more peace, freedom, safety, and power. What's up, pod fam? Hello. This is me, your host, Lisa Schlossberg, and welcome back to the Out of the Cave podcast. Today, before we get into the episode, I'm going to share a couple exciting announcements with you. As you probably have already heard if you've been following along, the first announcement always is come join me on Patreon. That is still relatively new and growing. Number 2 is to come join me at the Omega Institute, July 12th to the 17th. And the additional exciting announcement that I have to share with you about that is that if you register for the Omega Retreat before May 15th, you will get a free one-on-one coaching session with me. You can either use that before the retreat if you want to connect before we are in person together, or you can use that after the retreat to support you in integrating everything that came up and to help you unpack and keep working with the material that we started with in person. So before May 15th, sign up for Omega, get a free coaching session with me for a full hour. And then the last thing that I want to put on your radar is that on Thursday, May 14th, mark your calendars, this is going to be a first ever of this kind of event. I am going to be offering a free live trauma-informed restorative yoga practice. So especially if you've been listening along to this podcast, you have been hearing me talk about feeling safe in your body every week for months now. And so I am really feeling very called and inspired to not just talk to you about this and not just teach about it and not just podcast about it, but really to bring it to life and create an opportunity for you to experience it in real time. So if you are looking for more support in this area of feeling safe in your body, in your skin, this is what this is really for. So this is not yoga for working out. This is not yoga for athletics or performance. This is yoga as it was really meant to be. Mind-body union. Unison between the mind and body, and really, again, supporting you in being present in your body as it is and slowing down to feel safe enough in that. So there's a lot more that I would love to say about that. If you have any questions, please let me know, lisaschlossberg@gmail.com. And please just follow the show notes for all of the links to register for all of the things. And I really, really do hope to see you there. And I hope you enjoy this episode. Much love. Hello. Welcome back to the Out of the Cave podcast. This is your girl, Lisa Schlossberg, your host, and I am so excited to be here today. We've got a lot of thoughts, got a lot to cover today. I am once again just post-gym. Today was a fantastic leg day, and I am just feeling great. A couple things you might notice in terms of the sound. I do not have my mic with me right now. I'm recording this from my home, my childhood home, not where I live right now, in a big empty house. So I don't have my microphone with me. And also, you may be able to tell that I'm getting over being sick. And so I sound a little stuffy, but I am really riding this the show must go on energy. And like I said on the Patreon recently, recording a video where I'm just in this like, do it scared, do it tired, do it angry, do it stuffy, just do it without a mic, just do it, just keep showing up. So that's how I find you today. I'm so excited. So I want to dive in. Now, a couple things before we dive in. I want to continue to remember to give you the updates and announcements. That's the word I'm looking for. The first is the Omega Retreat that I will continue to remind you of, July 12th to the 17th at the Omega Institute in New York. Very, very excited for this again. So if you have any interest or desire to come work with me in person for 5 whole days, I can essentially all but guarantee a really life-changing experience just based on what happened last time. And then the other thing is that it is official by the time I'm recording this episode. I know I announced it many weeks ago that I was going to create a Patreon, and it was my intention to have it all set up before that episode went out, which I did. Now it exists. So if you are, I don't know, I'm just reminding you again because now it's like official. It does exist. There are some videos and stuff in there. So if you want to, please follow the show notes in this episode and you can come join us on Patreon. Now, the other thing I want to say about that, which I will acknowledge I feel a little bit awkward and uncomfortable about, but I'm going to do anyway, is I want to bring up finances, the financial component of the podcast for a moment, because, and this is why it feels weird, because I don't want to be here like asking for your money because that part feels weird to me. However, over the last few months, especially because this podcast now comes out every single week instead of every other week like it used to, that costs money. It costs money to produce this podcast. And it costs more money now that I'm doing it every single week. And I'm happy about that. I'm not going to change that. But sometimes I have to put on my like business CEO hat and I'm like, it's an expense that I've noticed. So the reason I'm saying that is because despite the fact that I did not create a Patreon to make money, it is an option that you can join the Patreon for $5 a month as a donation. And while I could, and I have explored potentially getting some sponsorships and stuff for the podcast, you probably know about me at this point that it is so rare that there's any sort of like brand or company that I really align with enough that I will do something like that. And so I'm committed to my own morals and ethics and beliefs that I'm not going that route. But so I'm saying this because if you are someone that has gotten anything out of this solo series or out of this podcast, my ask is not for your money or for your donation. My ask is if you would consider contributing to the energy exchange. That's the way that I think about it, is there's a lot, obviously, of energy, time going into creating this. And I know that there are some people who are listening and benefiting from it that I will potentially never hear from or know of. And so I would love for you to also join the Patreon, the tier of the Patreon. That means you can join us for the live call that will happen once a month. That is another thing I'm very excited about, is like connecting with this community of listeners. But if not that one's $25 a month. And then there's a $10 a month as well for just extra content, behind the scenes kind of stuff. But so if this has meant anything to you, if this has helped you in any way, my ask is that you will consider contributing to the energy exchange with a $5 a month donation. And again, you can find the details and links for all of that in the show notes, but I wanted to remember to come back to that and voice that. Okay, now, next thing that it just makes me so excited is, again, I think most of you know this at this point, you've heard me talk about it. I am currently in a doctorate program for trauma-informed practice and leadership, and so social work. And my homework, well, let me back up. The class that I'm in right now is called Trauma-Informed Interventions 2. Last semester was Trauma-Informed Interventions 1. And this whole class is really focused on bottom-up approaches, whereas the first one was focused more on top-down approaches.
So top-down approaches, for example, are more cognitive, like a cognitive behavioral therapy we would call like a top-down. You're really working with like your thoughts and your beliefs. And the idea is that when you kind of reframe things or change the way you're thinking about things, it will have this kind of trickle-down effect and you'll end up feeling differently, behaving differently, things like that. Now, bottom-up approaches are much more somatic. They're really starting with the body and moving their way up, so to speak. And so the reason I'm telling you this is because my homework for this week, this actual week, was to read an article and then create a presentation about it. The article that I read and had to create a presentation about was literally called, I'm not making this up, literally titled Trauma-Informed Weightlifting. And so I want to read you like a little clip from this article because this is, I mean, everything I've been saying, but can you imagine how validating it is to read through something like this? So I'm going to read you kind of the part of the summary and the discussion of the article because it's just too good. It's just too good. The timing, it's like you can't make up the timing of this. Okay, so if you're watching this on video, please excuse, I'm going to read straight off my screen. Okay. What it says is, and I can link to this article as well if you're interested, or email me if you want it. Weightlifting healed trauma through the felt sense of the mind-body connection, which created a healthier, more empowered, and connected trauma survivor. Okay, here's a whole paragraph. Weightlifting was a grounding experience that helped participants facilitate a more embodied presence. They were able to recognize the mind-body connection and use the embodied experience to positively influence their thoughts. Weightlifting is a felt experience that creates a unique way for people with past trauma to live in relationship with their own body. Interoception, or awareness of what is happening in the body, has the potential to influence the state of mind. Participants spoke of the bodily awareness they developed through weightlifting as a mechanism that allowed them to transform physical experiences of strength into emotional and psychological experiences of empowerment. As participants improved their physical health, they were also able to improve their mental health, as evidenced by the theme of improved confidence and self-efficacy. These findings support results of prior research, which has shown the benefits of resistance training on mental and emotional health. Okay, you can imagine how much this lights me up because, I mean, I don't need to tell you this is everything that I've been saying, but to be assigned this for homework this week is just too good. And this is why I said in previous episodes, I remember specifically being asked this question on the episode I did with Teresa, my client who is interviewing me, where she asked, you know, have I learned anything new that like challenges my beliefs around the way that I've been thinking of things so far? And listen, I am a teachable person. I am a coachable person. I do not think that I know everything. I am open to learning. And like I said in that episode, which was, I was in my first year of school at the time, I think. This is my experience of being in a doctorate program is I'm just feeling extremely validated. I'm feeling extremely validated because this is what I've known and what I know from my own lived experience and what I've been giving a voice to. And then I read the research that backs it up. And that's a really cool experience. But the other thing that it reminds me of is another thing John Gabriel used to say, where he has been talking about the mind-body connection and obesity related to stress and trauma. And, you know, and that's where I learned a lot of this originally. But I remember what he used to say, where he kind of was like, do you want to wait for science to catch up? Or do you want to just believe what feels true to you right now? Do you want to just go with your own lived experience and let that matter more than the fact that maybe there aren't like evidence-based research articles about it? And I thought of that because one of the things that this article was talking about is trauma-informed weightlifting and using strength training as a way to strengthen the mind-body connection and heal from trauma. It really acknowledged that this is like a new thing, you know, and it talked about how there's a lot of research about yoga and yoga as a mind-body exercise, which I also said weeks ago, where it's like, We know that that's been studied, that's been researched, but weightlifting is like relatively new to make its way into this kind of research, weightlifting for healing trauma and dissociation and things like that. And so it just reminded me of this concept again that John used to bring up, where it's like, do you want to wait? Do you want to wait for science? Because that could take a while. But also, if we just validate our own lived experience in our bodies and what we have gone through, what if we go with that? So I always found that somewhat inspiring because there are so many examples, and I could get so derailed by like giving you a lot of them, but there are so many examples of science hadn't caught up yet, and then science catches up at a certain point. And we don't need to wait for that. We don't need to wait to be validated. I mean, this is all about external validation anyway. We don't need to wait for that. So I guess in some ways what I'm saying is trust me, like trust what I'm saying, because there will be studies to prove it eventually. Okay, now having said that, another thing I want to share with you is direct feedback that I have gotten from one of my friends who was making his way through the solo series, because it just feels like too good to not share. And I genuinely hope that it inspires you. So I don't want to completely give away the identity of this person. So let's call him Bob. Bob, my friend, listening to the solo series. First, and these are direct text messages that I'm going to read you. The first thing he said was he was telling me essentially that the language around high involvement, low attachment didn't really resonate with him. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I do think that it's very valid and important to find language that resonates with you. And if there's anything that I'm saying where it's like, oh, that word doesn't capture it, or like, I don't like the way that sounds, that's okay. That's okay. And so what he was saying was, what his text read was, something like, I care a lot, but I'll be okay if this goes to shit, is much more accurate, right? That's his interpretation of high involvement, low attachment. I care a lot, but I'll be okay if it goes to shit. And I think that that's beautiful. I think that that's great. That is, if high involvement, low attachment, there's some stuff around involvement or attachment, then take this example, take this language. That is, I care a lot, but I'll be okay if it goes to shit. You can hold on to that. And he followed it up with saying, I recognize that this is just semantics, but I wanted to voice that. And again, my response to that is, I love that for you, because I mean, first of all, high involvement, low attachment is not my own original idea. I'm sharing that with you as part of this conversation because I think it's important, but language matters, and finding language that resonates with you to capture the message, even if you know that it's quote unquote just semantics, it's fine. Take that. Do what you got to do with that, And so if I care a lot, but I'll be okay if this all goes to shit resonates with you more, then that's how you can remember Hyla, because we're working with energy, okay? Whatever connects you to that energy is what matters. Okay, now, having said that, these are other follow-up text messages that I kept getting from Bob as he was making his way through the series and really practicing some of the things that I've been sharing. He said, diaphragm breathing seems to be changing my posture, more upright. I literally feel, so that was one day, and I was just like, yes, Bob, yes, we are doing it. And then he followed up by saying, I literally feel like I was trained to breathe backwards. And I remember saying to him, I think a lot of people feel this way. A lot of people feel that way. A lot of people don't know how to breathe, right? We covered that. Now, here's where it's a direct response to the internalized male gaze episodes, which I think is so fucking important. He says, direct quote, I was aware of how women were pressured by the male gaze, but I've been becoming more aware of how I'm subject to it as well. I think I started shallow breathing in high school. To puff my chest up, I would keep my diaphragm area tight. Surprise, surprise, that's around the time I started having acid reflux. Okay, so I need to pause for a moment because this is everything. Couple things to highlight here. First of all, this is not coming from a woman. This is not coming from someone who's looking at the internalized male gaze. This is coming from a man. And I want to acknowledge that the men that might be listening to this to validate that experience as well. The patriarchy is not just oppressive to women, it is oppressive to men as well. And so the same way that I can't get into like a whole thing about it because it could be a whole thing, but I want to validate the experience not just of women and the internalized male gaze, but men and the internalized male gaze. And I was so grateful for Bob bringing this up and acknowledging this and really admitting the way that it has also affected him. And so the same way that women, again, feel the need to show up a certain way, men also feel the need to show up a certain way. We know that. But here's why it matters so much. It's not just the way that we're showing up in the culture. It's about the fact that it affects our posture and our breathing and our body language and our physiology. And so if you, listener, can do what my friend Bob here is doing, which is taking in this information and then really making it a point to practice, you might notice that there is a connection between the internalized male gaze, your posture, your physiology, and your breath, and your chronic pain symptoms. Now, the next text I got from Bob says, breathing properly, it's been like 10 days, has definitely reduced my incidence of painful gas, partly because my posture has adjusted at my desk and on the couch. But my tummy and probably my gallbladder are just getting squeezed a lot less, and it is vibes. Okay, so again, this is everything because it's another illustration, it's another example of how you might have chronic pain symptoms and you can journal and journal and journal and journal and do that kind of work, which again is great. But you might also notice that becoming aware in real time of your posture, your physiology, and your breath can seriously shift the way that you experience pain and discomfort in your body. And I am just so jazzed about it because this is it. This is it. This is this whole thing, okay? The mind-body connection and creating safety in your body. You have the power to do this. You have the power to do this. So, last 2 text messages, he says, my life is really realigning. It is fascinating how in touch with my whole body a good breath can make me. So, you don't have to take it from me. Take it from my friend Bob. This is it. It's available to you. And then the last text I got from him, probably the best one yet, in all caps, I am meeting so many things with love. The follow-up text to that was fear and confusion and stuff, etc. And that is, again, it's everything. That is, if you can practice meeting your discomfort, meeting your pain with acceptance, not resistance, using your breath, creating the safety in your body, this is it. This is it. And so I know that not all of you have my phone number are going to send me text messages like this, but it was so amazing to me that I had the opportunity to witness this in a good friend of mine. And so, like I said, I really do hope that is inspiration for you because this is one of those things where it's like, I can't do it for you. And the reason that he is experiencing such relief and healing is because he's practicing. He's doing the work. And I'll also tell you, I didn't copy and paste this text into my notes, but one of his questions was like, how long will it take, to rewire my system? Hopefully a couple days. And my answer to him was, well, it took you, 20, 30 something years to get to this point. So a realistic expectation is that it might take more than a couple days. But again, the point here is you put in the work. You actually do the thing. You be highly involved. You have to do it. No one can do it for you. But if you do it, you will receive the healing. You can benefit from it. And so this is where, for me, I think a lot of this podcast or the way I feel about it is like, I am leading you to water. They say you can lead horses to water. You can't make them drink. A lot of this is like, I'm leading you to water. You got to drink it. You got to drink the water. If you want to be hydrated, you got to drink the water. I can't drink it for you, but I can lead you right to it. And that, to me, is what this whole series is intended to be, is like, here, this is how it's done. This is how you can do it step by step, like little bit at a time, but you have to do it. You have to put the work in, right? And it's not just like the work in terms of, oh my God, that we're going to get into all of this, but like the fierce self-compassion, right? The fierce self-compassion is not just about intentional weight loss and changing your body. Fierce self-compassion to practice taking a deep breath when you have been, in his words, trained to breathe backwards. You got to put the work in. You got to put the reps in. But then you will very really get to experience the benefit. And this just lights me the fuck up, because that's what we're here to do. I'm here to help you heal yourself. Okay, now, next up, we have a few follow-up thoughts from the last couple pods, because I think these are all important things. And I promise we're getting so close. Like, I really thought today we were going to be like, the beginning of intentional weight loss. And you know what? We might still have time for that. But before that, one thing that I want to talk about is when I keep talking about not respectfully giving a fuck about what other people are doing or what other people are thinking or like how other people are judging me, like that whole thing, there is a part of me that also wants to acknowledge, and we could come back to this. You have follow-up questions about this, because I do think that this could be like an entire series, is balance. Okay? That what I've seen many times is that we swing the pendulum. Again, we swing the pendulum from being overly preoccupied with what people think of us to swinging the pendulum over to the other side that is like, I don't care about anyone. And I see this with boundaries all the time. Like, if you are someone, we've probably said this before, but if you are someone who has come to be aware of your codependent people-pleasing tendencies, the pendulum swing that sometimes happens is like, you think what you're doing is setting boundaries, but really what you're doing is like telling everyone in your life to fuck off. And that's not sustainable, right? So this often can happen too. This certainly, I think, happened with me, where swung the pendulum to, instead of it being, I don't care about other people's judgments of me, became, I don't care about other people. And I want to kind of put on your radar the tendency for that to happen. And this is another place where the gray area, the truth of it, the balance is trickier, where it's about not caring what other people think of you, but also being considerate of other humans in the social context. And the example I think of to capture this, because life is yoga and everything is yoga, is when, like, if you're on your yoga mat, okay, and let's say you are doing a pose like happy baby. So basically you're like on your back, you're holding your feet in your hands. So your right foot is in your right hand, your left foot's in your left hand, and your knees are bent. You're just kind of like, you look like a happy baby. That's why it's called happy baby. And what happens sometimes is that you might like roll into your neighbor if the class is, packed enough and you're that close to the person next to you. And I always appreciate when a yoga instructor will explicitly call out, like, it's okay if you touch your neighbor, or like, it's okay if whatever, there's some overlap. So maybe if, you're like rolling on your back and you get over to your neighbor and you just touch each other, maybe you smile at each other and it's like, it's not a big deal. But I think of this example because it's like, right, the intention is that when you're on your mat, you're on your mat. And your space is your space, and you're not touching other people. You're not getting in the way of other people. You're on your mat. You're in your lane. That's the intention, right? And so it's like, that's the kind of being boundaried with not caring what other people think, and you are focused on you. But you also live in a social context where you want to be considerate of other people. And so what that means is, all right, sometimes you touch each other. And so can you just smile and wave and get back to your practice, right? And so whereas I think there was a period of my life where I was still so like rigid, where if someone, for example, in Happy Baby is like touching me on my mat, I would go to this place of like, we're in a yoga class. Do not touch me. Like, don't come close to me. It was just very rigid. And so again, the gray area of being in a social context where you're not giving too much weight or value or significance to other people's judgments of you also has to go hand in hand with being in a social context where, like, I don't know if it's true for you, but for me, it's like, it is a value of mine to also be kind and considerate and not be an asshole to everyone. And sometimes, we got to be flexible, right? It's boundaries with flexibility, tenderness, fierceness. You see the theme here. Okay, that was point number 1. Point number 2, I want to go back to the idea of being fluid with yourself, which is really to say staying present and being intuitive, so the example of sometimes I want to listen to music when I'm working out, sometimes I don't, sometimes I want a tomato, sometimes I don't, right? It's like I got to be in my body paying attention to how I feel and what I want in the moment, because it changes. That's what I mean when I say fluid. So the other reason that this matters, and I'm sure I'll come back to this at some point later when I'm talking about intentional weight loss and sustaining intentional weight loss, but the reason I bring it up now is because it reminds me of something that we talked about a long time ago on this podcast. I don't think it's come up at all in the solo series, but this idea of being spiritually fit enough. So I think it was an interview with one of my clients, Kate, where we were talking about this idea of spiritual fitness and how, for some people, it's not all or nothing, black and white when it comes to abstinence. And so we're talking about being a quote unquote gray area drinker, where it's not bad enough. You're not practicing complete abstinence from it. You want to have a relationship with alcohol, but it's seasons. It's like sometimes you can drink in a healthy, balanced, like moderate way. And then sometimes you're completely out of control. And so we talked about this concept of being spiritually fit. Am I spiritually fit enough right now in this season of my life to walk into, for example, a bar with my friends if I don't want to have a drink? Am I fit enough for that? And so we applied this same thing to food and eating. And here's why I think it matters and is coming back, is because if you are in the habit of making what feels true for you in any given moment associated with your identity, meaning I like listening to music when I work out, period. That is me. Or I like tomatoes, or I hate tomatoes, or whatever it is for you. If that becomes the way that you know yourself and you think of it as a permanent state, a permanent truth, then you're not being flexible, you're not being fluid, you're not being intuitive, and you're not in your body in the present moment. And so why I'm saying all this now is because your level of spiritual fitness changes. And that's valid. And so for someone who has a gray area kind of relationship with alcohol, it's not about saying I can drink or I can't drink and I'm going to live the rest of my life this way. And listen, if that works for you, if you are someone who practices straight up abstinence because you know that that works for you, then this doesn't apply to you. Okay. That is valid and that is necessary some of the time, but I'm not going to go into all of that. But the whole point here is when it comes to food and eating, we don't have the option of abstinence. And so I think it's important to consider that your level of spiritual fitness will shift and change with different seasons of your life. And so the same way that someone might do this work internally to become aware of the fact that, you know what? In this season, this week, this month, this phase of what's going on right now, I really can't have a bottle of wine in the house because I will drink all of it and I don't want to. And that same person at a different time might say, you know what? I find that my spiritual fitness is back where it was. I can have wine in the house and have a glass and put it away. But again, the point is it doesn't stay the same all the time. It's not just a static way of being. We are fluid. We change. And sometimes the level of spiritual fitness also changes. And you can adapt to that. You can respond to that. But you can only do so if you acknowledge that anything is true for you in any given moment, but maybe isn't necessarily true for you for every single moment moving forward, period, hard stop. Okay, now, my next point, follow-up thought, is I just thought that this was important to shout out again. I'm talking about being in the gym and being focused and driven and confident and brave and seen and exposed and all this stuff, okay? But as I was listening to it, I also just was like, okay, it feels important to acknowledge that part of my and confidence and empowerment feels like neither of those are capturing what I want. It's confidence and it is empowerment and it is trust in myself and safety. I think safety is the word. Part of the reason I feel so safe in the gym is not just because of the emotional safety, but it's also because when it comes to the physical dimension, I know what I'm doing. I trust myself and I feel safe in a gym, not just because of the emotional safety internally, but because I was a certified personal trainer. I know how to work gym equipment. I know what to do with the dumbbell. I know how to not injure myself. I know what proper form looks like. I know what to do with the cables. I know what to do with the machines. I know what to do with the resistance bands. I know what I'm doing here. And so that also feels important to me to again just acknowledge and shout out, because it's not it's an example of how it's not all about what's going on emotionally. We have to pair that with what's going on physically. And that again is going to, it's becoming a theme, but it's going to continue to be a theme, which is why I wanted to shout that out. That is, it's not just the way I feel with myself that I feel safe and empowered and trusting. It is that I know how to manipulate the equipment in a gym setting. And that's where some of my safety, empowerment, trust, and freedom come from. And so I will reiterate definitely something I've said before, that is, if you don't know how things work, right? And then just think about it. It's like, you can trust yourself and be kind to yourself all you want. But if you walk into a gym and you have no idea how to do anything, of course it feels kind of unsafe or dangerous. In some ways it is. In some ways it is. You don't want to injure yourself. You don't want to hurt yourself. You need to know what's going on here in the physical dimension. This has a lot to do with intentional weight loss, okay? And so I think about, I'm just reiterating what I said many episodes ago when I first started telling you about me learning how to work out and like the Tinder dates and all the things of the guys that took me to the gym is, I'll tell you what the yoga instructor in a yoga class said recently. We had a new student come who had never done it before. And right before the practice started, he said something that I want you all to remember all the time. That is, remember that everyone in this room had their first class at one point. We have all felt as clueless as you might feel in this room right now. We have all been beginners. So when you look around the room and you feel like everyone knows exactly what they're doing, it's because they've done this before. And there's no way for you as someone, and this is a Bikram class. For those of you that know yoga, you know what that means. You don't have to. But the idea is, he was like, when you look around and maybe you start telling yourself that like you feel out of place because you don't know what you're doing, just remember, every single one of us in this room has had that exact experience, and you are exactly where you need to be. You're supposed to feel clueless. You're supposed to feel like you don't know what's going on. That's okay, right? And just hang in there. And so I think that's important, because the same thing happens at the gym where we expect ourselves to feel comfortable. And it's like, but again, respectfully, if you are ignorant about what to do and how to do it, it's valid that you don't feel comfortable emotionally because of the limitations that you have with what's going on physically. And so this is where I will plug again, getting a personal trainer if you have the privilege and the resources to do that. Anyway, I so badly wish I could be everyone's personal trainer, because we would be doing trauma-informed weightlifting, but maybe one day. Okay, now moving on. The next thing I wanted to say was the example that I gave you about sweat and my experience of sweat, my relationship with sweat, feels important to come back to, because as I was listening to that, I was like, it's not about sweat, obviously, but what it is about in a lot of ways is the power of the conscious input, which is something that you've heard me say over and over again at this point. But I was thinking about how, when I thought of sweat as something that was like bad or that I didn't want, if I started sweating, I would immediately be in resistance to that. And that's like contraction and tension in my body, right? I'm holding my breath. I'm responding to the discomfort with more discomfort. I'm responding to discomfort with stress because, again, we're designed to do that. But all I had to do was change my conscious input. That is, we're in the gym, we're working out, sweat is something we want. So now something is good. Now it's happening and I'm not in resistance to it. I actually want it. But so nothing about the experience is actually different other than my own conscious input. That was, now this is something I want rather than something I don't want. And when I was listening to it, what it reminded me of is when I was going through recovery. So I was at a period of time, right, where I was counting every calorie, every step, every workout, every morsel of food. There was so much fear and control around it. And the dialogue in my head was very often about my goal was like eat as little as possible. And then I was in starvation and I was malnourished and my hair was falling out and I lost my period and I was freezing all the time and all the symptoms of essentially malnourishment was the way that I was living my life. And so I had to learn how to practice eating more and exercising less. Okay, this is all review of the story. But what I was thinking about is how at this period of time, I very intentionally, and this is module 6 of the coaching program, was doing a lot of work internally to shift my focus from a weight-oriented mindset to a health-oriented mindset. Health meaning holistic health, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, physical, environmental, all kinds of health had to be on my radar more than my weight. So part of that was I had to change the reward system in my brain, meaning that at a certain point, if I thought that I ate as little as possible, and that was my goal, ding, 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 all the reward, all the dopamine, all the success, all the achievement, like that's how I felt. I ate as little as possible. Great, congratulations. Now, at this point in my life, I realized that that was actually not just not the solution, but decidedly part of the problem. I had to change the way I was thinking, not just change the way I was behaving, change the way I was thinking. So that when I, for example, had the tendency to eat less and keep going back to eat as little as possible, eat as little as possible, eat as little as possible, I had to redirect my focus and remind myself, we have a new goal now. We have a new goal now, which is to eat this many calories, at least this many calories, to make sure that I'm feeding myself enough. That became the new goal. And so this very interesting thing happened where it was entirely internal. I couldn't see it outside of me, but I could feel that because I consciously communicated to myself, we have a different goal now. If I was eating as little as possible, I wouldn't get that dopamine hit. Why? Because it wasn't my goal anymore. That's not what I wanted to do anymore. And so if I then was like, okay, right, what's my goal? It's eat this many calories. It's eat enough. It's fuel myself enough. Every single time I did that, now that's where I got my dopamine hit from, that I was doing the thing that I wanted to do. I was aligning my behaviors with my intentions and my values, which was recovery. But so the whole point here is, again, I was able, and this is, I think it's a tool, it's a skill to be able to say, this is no longer my goal. And so I don't want to get my happy chemicals from that behavior or choice or decision. This over here, this is my goal now. And it's going to take this repeated experience over and over and over again, the repetition, the consistency of that's not it, this is it. That's not it, this is it. That was it at a certain point, but now it's updated to this. And so you can change your experience so much of your relationship with food the same way that all I had to do is say to myself, wait, I'm in the gym, I'm working out. Sweat is a positive thing, not a negative thing. And it's like, oh, great. Me eating enough became a positive thing, not a negative thing. And so that's what made it feel good and was positively reinforcing the behavior. I wasn't looking for someone outside of me to say, congratulations, you ate enough today. It was that I told myself, this is the intention now, so that when I followed through on that and I achieved that, I could receive the neurochemicals in my brain released associated with achievement and accomplishment. And even I think about like the other day, like I wasn't feeling well, right? Obviously. And the kind of rule of thumb, if you're wondering, is when you're not feeling well, like from the neck up and it's like a cold, you're okay to be active and like work out. It's when it's beneath the neck, typically, general rule of thumb, that you want to like stay home and rest. And so I went to the gym the other day and I kept noticing my tendency to like want to go hard. I go hard. But then I had to remind myself over and over again that the goal for today was just move. And actually, beyond that, the goal for today is to not go hard. The goal for today is to not be high intensity. The goal for today is to be way more, balanced, where it's like it's movement, but it's not hardcore. And so every time I found myself being like, I'm not lifting as heavy as I want to be, I got to remind myself that's the goal. The goal today is to not lift your heaviest weight. And then I was able to be like, oh yeah, great. Okay, I'm really proud of what I'm doing here. So your intention is everything. And we're going to say a lot more about that, but your intention is everything. And you have a lot of power with your conscious input, how that's going to go. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about that, because this is like literally, all of this is such a segue, is discomfort. Our relationship with discomfort. Okay. Because if you are in a relation, this will be your homework assignment for this week. Okay. What I want you to think about is your relationship with discomfort and your conscious input in your relationship with discomfort. Okay. So you have your conscious input, and you have the experience of discomfort. Let's look at this triangulation situation. If your relationship with discomfort and your conscious input is that discomfort is bad, you want to look at that. Because some discomfort is bad, but some discomfort is not bad. As we have talked about, if you want growth and evolution and anything that resembles intentional weight loss, you'll have to get out of your comfort zone, okay? So discomfort is actually the area of growth. So it's not all bad. But again, this is where I don't want to say we're fighting our biology, but we have to work with our biology to know that our brain is going to move in the opposite direction of discomfort. And what that means is that a lot of us have internalized the belief that discomfort is bad. Discomfort is wrong. I should not be uncomfortable. And more problematic than all of that, and I will say a lot more about this, is that you have come potentially to believe the story that if you are uncomfortable and you are putting yourself through discomfort, that you don't love yourself. And again, this is where fierce self-compassion comes in. That is, oh no, that's not how it works. Because sometimes, again, if you want to get out of your comfort zone, you have to know that discomfort is appropriate. You have to know that discomfort is expected. You have to know that discomfort is part of it. You have to know discomfort is safe. You have to know that you're going to be uncomfortable and it's okay. And some of the time, you are so uncomfortable because you love yourself so much. You are willing to tolerate discomfort. You love and care about yourself so much that you're forcing yourself to go through discomfort. So the problem that I have with the cultural narrative, especially around weight and anti-diet culture, is that if you're doing something like intentional weight loss and you feel uncomfortable about it, it must mean that you hate yourself. And it's like, oh God, some of the time that is true. For some of you, that might be true, but that is not always the case. So like I talked about in the last episode, if you can, now let's go back. You have your conscious input and you have discomfort. If you can remember that you are with something like exercise, for example, but it doesn't have to be, you are putting yourself in discomfort on purpose. You are the one doing this and you're doing it with intention. Then you can change your conscious input about it and change your entire experience of it. So the same way that I went from, oh God, I'm sweating, I hate this, to, oh, hell yeah, I'm sweating, this is awesome. Nothing changed other than my conscious input. But then that had everything to do with my internal relationship and lived embodied experience of it changing. So I think the thing that matters a lot here to me is that when I'm working out, and I said this too about it's not just exercise, but it's also something like a meditation, where if I'm practicing discipline to be uncomfortable, and there's a part of me, because this is always what happens, there is a part of me, the same way that it's not that I don't care what other people think of me, it's like I get distracted by caring and then I bring myself back. The same thing happens where I put myself in discomfort, and then there's always a part of me that's like, but it hurts. Like that's the animal brain being like, oh no, discomfort. It's appropriate that that happens, but then I get to respond to it with, it's supposed to. Again, like I said in the last one, you're shredding up your muscle tissue. Of course it hurts. Yes, it hurts. It's uncomfortable. Okay. And then it's like, but I don't want to. And it's like, okay, that's okay. What we're doing is practicing tolerating discomfort on purpose, with intention, by choice. And this is the part that matters the most, is you want to remember that when you are, for example, exercising and you're uncomfortable, you get to tell yourself, I know. We're doing it on purpose. We actually want the discomfort. The discomfort is a positive sign, right? If you can tell yourself that, you are in a place of choice, which means you're in a place of freedom, which means you are in a place of safety. And that is always what it's going to come down to, because the alternative to that, okay? Now here's the thing. Let's say you're doing the same exact workout, but you forget, because of what happens, you start feeling like it's happening to you. Like it's like someone's forcing you into it, okay? And if your relationship with exercise is such that it feels like you're being forced into it, the problem, the actual root of that being a problem, is that you don't feel safe because you don't have choice and you don't have freedom, okay? So think about like when you're in survival mode, when you are running from a predator or playing dead in the presence of a predator or something like that, okay? Or you're fighting a predator, okay? Fight, flight, freeze, whatever. When you're in the presence of a predator and you're in survival mode, you don't have choice. You don't have choice. You got to do what you got to do because it's life or death, okay? And so if that is how it feels when you're at the gym, that you have no choice, you have no power, you have no freedom, you also are communicating to your system that you're not in a place of safety, which is just factually untrue. You're creating the experience of feeling unsafe, but you're at the gym on purpose because you took yourself there. Okay? So you always want to remember when it comes to experiencing discomfort, especially the kind like going to the gym, you're doing this to yourself. You're doing this for yourself. And at any point you want to stop, stop. You have choice. You have freedom. You are safe. And then I find, and I'm curious if you try this on and play with this and experiment a little bit, I find internally that that part of me, like my animal brain that's like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. When I turn inside and I'm like, yeah, I know. And it's like, then why are you making me so uncomfortable? And it's like, oh, because this is how our muscles grow. We actually want the discomfort. The response that I get is like, oh, okay. Well, right. Okay. And then it's like, we stop fighting. And so the important thing again is not that I'm getting myself out of discomfort. I'm not changing anything about the discomfort of the experience. What I'm changing is my conscious input, the narrative, the story, and the belief around it. And so if I can tell myself, I'm doing this on purpose, I'm doing this for my own well-being, I'm doing this for my own benefit, for my own health, my own healing, intentional weight loss. I don't have to, but I'm choosing to. Now you're in a place of safety, which makes it sustainable. And this is just why for me, I know you've heard me say stuff like this all over again, but it's like, this is why for me, when people come along and are like, intentional weight loss can't be safe, intentional weight loss can't be sustainable. It's like, okay, well, if your experience of intentional weight loss is that you felt coerced and it didn't feel safe because your relationship with yourself created the physiology of threat and danger, then that's really valid that your attempt could not be sustainable. But you also don't get to come over here and tell me that that means it's unsustainable and unsafe for everybody all the time. It's not. It is not. So anyway, we'll come back to that, but oh God, that pisses me off so much. All right, now, friends, we're at 50 minutes, which means I'm going to tell you the last follow-up thought that I had, and that's going to be today's episode. So here's what I want to say is I was at Bathhouse. I don't know if you guys know Bathhouse. Bathhouse is, well, it is what it sounds like. It is legitimately a house of baths. And it's a place, there's one in Brooklyn that is very close to my apartment, which is where I went. But it's a bath house. So there's a bunch of different saunas of different temperatures, steam room, things like that. And then a bunch of different pools. So everything from a hot tub to a cold plunge. Bathhouse. And I love anything like this where I can sit in like the hottest sauna I've ever experienced and then experiment with a cold plunge, which is not always my thing. But I was thinking of you guys while I was at Bathhouse because of how much I get to practice everything that I'm teaching you here, also in something like a sauna and in a cold plunge. So the reason that I wanted to add this and bring this up is because I keep saying it doesn't need to be exercise. It doesn't need to be movement and working out and going to the gym where you practice being uncomfortable on purpose. So if you are someone who has no interest in working out or going to the gym, or it's not accessible to you right now, another place that you can practice this is with temperature exposure, whether that's in like a bath or a shower or something like that. So I know cold plunges in general really had their moment and are still, I think, in their moment culturally. It got very popular. Many of you are probably familiar with Wim Hof, who is known as the Iceman, who does a lot of this work when it comes to cold exposure. And he's fascinating and inspiring if you have any interest. But what I want to say about it is two things. First, that everything that I've shared with you about using your breath as an anchor and a way to communicate safety to your system while you are in discomfort, and now we could say potentially extreme discomfort, is applicable here. And so if you are a cold plunging person, you know, or you respectfully should know that your breath is everything. Because, and the reason that cold plunges have become so popular in some ways is because when you can put yourself in that kind of discomfort and stay with your breath and control your breath, so that you slow it down, you will have the experience of seeing how when you enter into such discomfort, your body wants to respond with, get me the fuck out of here. We're wired, again, to get out of it. So if you can stay integrating the energy of safety via a controlled, slowed breath, now you are experiencing and expanding your tolerance to experience discomfort with safety. So like my friend Bob said it earlier, I'm meeting so many things with love. Instead of experiencing discomfort and meeting it with fear, you're meeting discomfort with love in a lot of ways. You're meeting discomfort with acceptance rather than resistance. And so again, cold plunges and saunas and exercise and all these things, the reason that they can be so powerful and life-changing is not because of the cold plunge itself, but because of what you're doing with your relationship with discomfort and conscious input. And so I remember one time, I think it was Wim Hof himself who was saying this, where, someone was asking him about, aren't you uncomfortable? Like, do you really enjoy this? And something he said was like, I hear myself say, and now Lisa Schlossberg, have had this experience many times where if I do something like a cold plunge, that same voice that's like, it's so uncomfortable. Why are you lifting this dumbbell? Is the same voice that's like, it's so cold. Why are you in this bath? And it's like, no, I know it's cold. And so that was something that Wim Hof, I heard him say once, where he was like, yeah, so it's cold. Okay, so it's cold. Like I can tolerate cold. And then this to me is directly transferable. It is a transferable skill that when you can practice, yeah, I'm uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm cold. Yeah, my bicep hurts. Yeah, okay, discomfort is part of life. Discomfort is something I can accept. Okay, I'm uncomfortable. It is a direct translation to, yeah, so I'm sad. Yeah, so I'm scared. Yeah, so I'm grieving. Yeah, so I'm jealous. Like, okay, I can meet my honest, authentic experience with acceptance rather than resistance. And when you can do that, now you have a toolbox full of things to help you cope other than food and eating and dieting and weight loss. So this is an invitation where, again, if you are not someone going to the gym practicing be uncomfortable on purpose there, you can use something like a cold plunge or a sauna to do it. Because I do the same thing in the sauna where I notice when I've been in there for long enough, and I love a sauna. Oh my God, talk about love sweating these days. I love a sauna, like the hottest sauna. Please find it for me and put me in it. Anyway, when I've been in there for long enough, and my heart rate starts rising and I could tell, like, I'm getting uncomfortable now. That's where I get to practice closing my eyes, feeling my heart, feeling my body, and just taking a few slow, deep breaths. And so whether it's extreme heat or extreme cold, this is something that I have practiced with myself that, again, just strengthens the muscle of turning toward discomfort rather than away from discomfort, which I genuinely think has everything to do with sustainable, intentional weight loss. And it feels so incomplete to not share this little anecdote, because I remember one time I was and so now, I know so much about the mind body connection and physiology and like all this stuff that when I go to a place like Bathhouse, I'm very interested to see how people do the cold plunge, because it is such a reflection of what's going on in their nervous system and how present or not they are to that. And so what I've seen all sorts of things, but one of the memories that I just I think about so much as a metaphor for everything was there were a couple people, and I'm like, I do not ever recommend doing this. I recommend doing the exact opposite of this, of what I'm about to tell you. But there were people at Bathhouse doing a cannonball into the cold plunge. So I can't tell you how strong, like my whole body is contracting just thinking about it. I can't tell you how much I do not recommend you do that. But the idea of watching these people do this was they would put themselves in a little ball, dunk their entire body under it in one swoop, right? Like their whole body goes under. And then what I was essentially watching was the panic, because it was the embodiment of going from, as we've talked about, the comfort zone to the danger zone. They were going immediately in 1 second, full body from the comfort zone to the danger zone. There was no learning zone. There was nothing gradual about it. There was nothing trauma informed about it. There was nothing safe about it. And that's what I watched. I watched these people they're putting themselves into a full-blown panic, and they cannot control their breath. And so now they're not just uncomfortable, right? But they're responding to discomfort, with added stress, with added tension. So now they're not just cold, but they're hyperventilating because of how they put themselves into it. And this is where, again, I think this is an illustration of what a lot of us do, whether we know it or not just in a cold plunge, but in general in life. We go from, as I said last time, we expect ourselves to go from pre-contemplation to action. We expect ourselves to go from the comfort zone to the danger zone and then have that be sustainable. But guys, if you consider the mind-body connection, and you consider physiology, and you consider the way your nervous system operates, that's not sustainable. So I have given you, before this, I have shared with you that the visual that I get is thinking about bringing myself to the shallow side of the pool, not throwing myself into the deep end, but to bring myself to the shallow side of the pool where I could take one step in at a time. And that is exactly also how I do the cold plunge, where if I'm walking into the pool, and this is like, just again, to give you the context, I'm coming from the hottest sauna ever, where I'm like, I can't sit in there another second. I'm so hot. And then I go one step at a time into the cold plunge. And as I'm doing it, I know that as soon as I step into that pool, my whole body is going to start contracting. My whole body is going to start responding to the discomfort with tension and contraction. And that is where I close my eyes and I find my breath and I slow it down. and I'm mindfully inhaling and mindfully exhaling. And what I'm doing, very much like at the gym, is I am creating, again, the physiology of safety. So now I can be uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm cold. Yeah, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm safe. It's not I'm cold and I'm uncomfortable and I'm going to respond to this as though I'm unsafe, because that's not true. Now, the last thing that I want to say about cold plunges and saunas and all this stuff and exercise. So I've talked about how exercise is a stressor, okay? We could argue that it's a positive stressor, and that would be an evaluation from your human brain. Reminder, your animal brain doesn't know the difference between stressors. It doesn't know where the source of the cortisol is coming from. So at the end of the day, you have to consider you're a mind, body, soul system of energy. And so you do not want to expect yourself, for example, you don't want to expect yourself to have the same kind of energetic output in your workouts during a really overwhelming, stressful season of your life as you would when things were like light and easy and not as stressful in a general sense. So what I'm saying is you always have to consider, it's not just about exercise, and it's not just like exercise is good, I should do it. It's like you have to consider the system of energy that you are and the impact that more stress will have on you holistically. And that's why, like, just as an example of what I'm talking about, I had a call with someone recently where, and I see this all the time, especially with new mothers, where let's say you gave birth a few months ago, and very often there's this like thought or belief of like, I should be able to do the exercise that I was doing before I gave birth or before I got pregnant. Like, why can't I just get back there? And it's like, you are a new mother. So not only is your body going through all of the recovery of that, but you are a new mother. You have a child that you're taking care of now, which also means that you are likely barely sleeping at all. You are on call all the time. You're on alert all the time. Like, this is a major transition and adjustment period of your life. You are stressed out. You are sleep deprived. You are overworked. That is the season that you're in. You are not going to have it in you, nor should you, to do the exercise that you used to do, because your overall holistic level of stress is so much higher than it was before. So it wouldn't even be advisable for you to do those kinds of workouts, okay? But the reason I'm saying all this right now is because the same is true for something like a cold plunge or extreme heat in a sauna exposure, where if you are someone that is so chronically dysregulated, it could arguably be less helpful. It could be more potentially harmful for you to add all that stress to your system when you are already at a really high, like resting cortisol level, for example. I do think that if you have, again, the right mindset about it, and you are very clear that you are doing this in a container for a specific period of time on purpose, that you could try it on, for example, for like 2 to 5 seconds in a shower. Turn it really cold for 5 seconds and just practice being present in that. Practice feeling your breath move through you while you're in that discomfort. I do think that there is the potential to do this, in little micro doses, literally, rather than think you need to spend 5 minutes in a bucket of ice. Like, that's not going to work. But you want to, again, it's not just about exercise is good. Exercise is also a stressor. It's not just that cold plunges and saunas are good or healthy. It's that these things stress you out. And you do have to have, I think, a foundation of kind of feeling safe and settled and grounded in your body so that you can practice tolerating discomfort in a way that feels safe. And so that just feels like an important point because, again, it is never about anything being inherently good or bad or right or wrong or healthy or unhealthy. It's like we need details of the context and the person and bio-individuality. And so while I can say all this stuff about exercise and cold plunges and saunas and everything else, I want to also just acknowledge the nuance to it all. So that is everything that I had to say in terms of my follow-up thoughts. And again, I mean, I know I keep mentioning this, but it is so much of this is the foundation and the necessary groundwork, because we need to be talking about we really definitely need to be talking about your relationship with discomfort and your conscious input about your experiences with discomfort if you want to have any conversation about intentional weight loss. Because again, it's just intentional weight loss is going to, I think, likely, inevitably for most of us anyway, require you to get uncomfortable. You're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. And you want to remember, most importantly, that you're not doing it because you have to, right? We talked about this episodes ago. There's a difference between I want to and I need to. You're doing it because you're choosing it. And anyway, so next, I really, you know what? I'm not even going to make any promises, but I'm tempted to just sit here and just hit record on the next one, because there's so much that really is starting with actually intentional weight loss. So for now, we've hit an hour, which means we're going to wrap it. But that's where we're going. It's where we've been going, but we're getting real close. We're really close. I thought we were going to get there today, but you know what? I'm on the journey with you. So I think that's all I'm going to say for now. And thank you. Thank you for being here as always. Please join me on Patreon. Please join me at Omega. And please, if you have any questions, let me know. And please rate, review, subscribe, and share the pod. And I will see you next week. Mwah.